Okay, today we're going to be talking about the DJI Mini 3 Pro, and this is not going to be another review like all the others. I'm going to be talking about what it's like to use this as a solo content creator. I make fitness content, so I'm oftentimes running with it and having it follow me. So if that fits what you're going to be using it for, then stick around. Thank you for clicking on this video. I'm Brady. If you haven't met me yet, I'm Brady. I'm a videographer, a personal trainer, and I make content on social media, specifically with me running in it a lot of the times. And I've had this drone, this guy, for the last 3 or 4 months, I'd say. I think so. And the original reason that I got it, and probably what makes it interesting to you, is it has this follow mode. So if you're running, it'll track behind you. You've probably seen things on social media where people are using the same feature. There are other drones from DJI that I've used that have the same feature that are even better. I've used the Air 3 that has obstacle avoidance in all the different directions. And I've been flying drones for several years. This is the only one that I have currently, but I would say that I have enough experience with DJI products to be able to accurately review it. So for this video, I'm going to talk first about the things that I don't like about it, and then I'm going to talk about the things that I do. And before that, I'll talk about my main purposes that I use this for and kind of how I've been using it for the last few months. So my main purposes for having this drone is I'm using it for social media videos. So I'll go on a run and I'll have it follow me from behind so that you can get those aerial view shots showing me running, that kind of thing. What's also cool is it is a super light drone, so you can use it for a bunch of different things. You don't need a specific license to be able to fly it, in the US at least. And I'll explain that later, but it's a little bit different in Europe than it is in the US for the restrictions and laws. I have used this drone now for a couple commercial client projects, so I can speak to that a little bit and what that's like. Okay, so one of the first things that I don't like about this drone is having to carry this remote. This is the DJI RC remote. It's pretty nice. It's pretty cool. They make a newer one that has antennas that flip up, but this is the one that I have. It's not great for running in that you have to hold on to this. So I have these Peak Design. I don't know if you can see those little things. Hopefully it picks it up. Oh no, it's fine. Let's see. Can it pick it up? So I have these Peak Design little giblet things that hang on the end of it, because when I'm running, I will either have it in a vest or I will wear a wrist strap that connects to these Peak Design things, and I'll have it in my hand while I'm running. You can pick it out in some of the videos if you're very astute, but most people really won't notice it unless they're like really looking for it. It's not a huge issue, but it does make sure that you can't really run with this for 12, 15 miles. You're just not going to want to hold something like this in your hands for that long. I run typically with a GoPro for a long time, but to me, a GoPro, I kind of forget that I'm holding it, whereas this is like I'm gripping onto something. And if you hit these back buttons, they have functions for the drone. Like the back buttons will switch from vertical to horizontal mode, and then you can also hit the other back button and it goes from camera viewing straight to automatically going perpendicular and looking at the ground. So those are the two back buttons. And if you're running with it, you can kind of click the buttons by accident sometimes, which is not super fun. Another thing that I don't really love about the drone is, and this is something that they definitely put in here so that you couldn't just buy this drone instead of upgrading to the other drones, is that it doesn't have obstacle avoidance in all of the modes. So it only has obstacle avoidance if it's going straight. So in the follow mode, when it's just behind you, it can sense below it, above it, in front of it, but it doesn't have sensors on the sides of it. So that is just a way for them to distinguish between the lowest model, the Mini, and then the Air, and then the Mavic. I think it's the Mavic Pro now. But that is kind of why they do it. But it does kind of stink because it makes it a little bit of a one-trick pony in that you can only get those shots behind you. And those are really cool, and the obstacle avoidance ends up getting these really cool shots that are more interesting than just like following me behind. There are ones where it swings behind a pole and then it goes underneath a tree and dips down. And those are the most interesting shots, especially for social media. They're only a few seconds long. So having those shots that kind of sweep around, people have definitely noticed and commented on the way that the drone does that. And it's a pretty cool feature So I just wish that for the Mini that it would have that obstacle avoidance on the sides so that you could change the mode. So speaking of that, there's a mode called Parallel that I have not really used at this point. I've tried to use it, but instead of it following behind you, picture it just follows you on the side. So when I went to Acadia, I had this vision of getting this shot from the side that we ended up getting, but not through the use of the parallel feature, which was a bummer. Instead, my friend Jason had to physically manually control the drone and track alongside me, so we had to do it a few times to make sure it was right, which I guess is just a normal thing, but for me as a solo content creator, it's made it so that I can't get these parallel shots unless I have a friend with me, or unless I put it out to the side. If you're doing this for social media, you could put it out to the side, you could get a really wide shot of it, and then you could use the auto framing feature in something like DaVinci Resolve to track alongside you, and that's something that I've done. But just for getting the actual drone motion of following to the side, you can't use the parallel feature that well because of that avoidance. And also one of the things is you need to be pretty close to get that parallel feature. The way that it works on the RC is you put a little box around what you want to be focusing on, and then it'll track to that object. So if it's a person, if it's a building, it can track alongside that. But every time that I would put a box around me, it would say this object is too far away or something like that. So it just made it a hassle, and the worst thing you want is to be stuck, especially on a run, trying to get this mode to work, and it's just not working. So because of that obstacle avoidance and because of the way that the sensors work and for picking up this auto tracking, I only end up using the follow modes, which is just a bummer because you end up not being able to use the point of interest mode and any of the other fancy modes. So a lot of them are just kind of like obsolete to me, which is not great. I really wish that I could get more unique shots than just have the following one. So that's just me, but I think that you'll experience the same thing if you have this drone, is you want to be able to create more interesting shots than just one, especially when you're paying $500 or so for a drone, probably more. And I'll get to that in how I paid less in a second. All right, this is gonna be the last thing I complain about because this drone is really awesome, but one of the things that I don't love is how light it is. And that might sound stupid because the reason I got it was to be light, but hear me out. So when you're shooting a static shot, like I have in this video in Acadia, I have it off the coast and the winds are pretty substantial. So on our trip, we had the Air 3 and the Mini 3 Pro. So we were flying both of them at the same time. And for getting this static shot, you could see that the drone is really struggling to stay where it was. And that might sound like really stupid because the point is to have a drone light enough so you can dodge all of the Part 107 restrictions and all of that. But that's just something to be aware of. Okay, now let's go to the things that I really like about it. And there are way more things that I like. So I kind of mentioned this before, but the obstacle avoidance in that follow mode is pretty nutty. The fact that it can like swing underneath branches, it makes it feel like this immersive experience. It's kind of hard to explain, but I've taken it out on trails near where I am in Baltimore, and it does a really good job of getting low, of going up high, and you can get these really cool shots. The only thing you have to do to be able to get those shots is to carry the remote with you, and that's just so that the remote can stay in connection or contact with the drone. When I was in Acadia, the way that I would do it is I had a running vest, and the running vest, basically any running vest can fit the remote in it and the drone. So what I would do, and this was pretty cool, was I had a power bank, I had a USB charging cable, and I would throw it in the running vest. I took out the water to make more room. So while I was running, I had the drone plugged into the power bank, and then I had the remote in there as well. So every couple miles we would stop. If we got to a cool place, we would take the drone out to follow us, and then I could fly it for a while, put it back in, and then I could continue charging it. I would say that if you can afford wearing a running vest and slipping the remote into the back of it, that makes things so much easier, just so much easier. Another thing that I do really like about the drone is that in D-Cinelike, you can get 10-bit color, which is not as easy to grade in comparison to like D-Log-M, which is what you'll have on like the Osmo Pocket or any of the nicer, I think it's D-Log on the other drones. But all that to be said, you can get that amount of color to be able to create those really cool looking vibrant images. And I like to color grade all of my own stuff, so I don't take the drone image straight from camera. I like to put it in post. I use DaVinci Resolve, and I will color grade it from there. At this point, I basically just throw a LUT on all of my drone footage just so that it's way easier for me to grade. So if you're interested in downloading those LUTs, those are going to be down in the description to check out. Another thing that I really do like about this drone, beyond it being small enough to carry, is that it is pretty inconspicuous when it's actually in the air. So I took this to Copenhagen, and I made sure to get the proper licensing to be able to fly my drone there if anyone came up to me. One thing to remember is to look at drone maps and local laws of areas that you can fly. So one of the areas of Copenhagen that you can fly legally is you can fly over that harbor canal. So a lot of the shots that I got from the Copenhagen movie were using this drone, and it was really easy to use. And one of the cool things is that it's so small that it honestly looks like a bird. It's not like putting up a DJI Phantom into the sky that's going to garner a ton of attention. You can just sit down, open the drone up, launch it in the air, fly it, get some images, and then you can bring it back and put it back in your pocket. If you've ever flown a drone, you know that it's kind of weird to be the one guy flying a drone, and you can get a lot of attention, a lot of unwanted attention actually, if you're flying a drone. So in my case, I tried to do it as quickly as possible. I had a Uniqlo like crossbody bag that fit both the remote and the drone, and I just shoved it in there. So then after like 10 minutes of flying the drone, I was like out of there. So you can just get the shots that you want and then move on, which that's what all of us want to do. Okay, so to sum up everything, the drone is extremely light. So in high windy conditions, you're gonna want something that's heavier. If you are a videographer that's working for someone, or you're creating maybe a movie for someone else, what you could do is just get the nicest drone possible, like the Mavic 3. Those things have crazy range and they're really, really nice, and they do well in those conditions. And if you want to be able to just run and gun, take a small drone, then you can take the Mini 3 with you, which I do not have the funds to be able to do that. But if you are in the blessed position to do that, then go for it. But that's kind of what I would recommend. But beyond the size and then the lack of the obstacle sensing side to side, which limits the amount of modes that you can realistically use without controlling the remote, I think that this is an amazing drone, and I'm definitely not going to be upgrading anytime soon. I've gotten commercial work with this, shooting outdoor real estate, and the colors are super accurate, super vibrant. No one's coming up to me and saying, hey, that's not the nicest drone, we're not going to pay you. This totally works. So for $500, you can get drone quality that people are actually going to pay for. And that's ultimately the goal that most of us have with using equipment, is that somehow, somewhere, someone will pay us to make the content that we're putting out. Last point on pricing, you can definitely save money like I did by going to the refurbished section of DJI's website. I ended up getting this drone for like $540 something. It just knocks it down a bit. You can still get the warranties. You can still get DJI Care Refresh, which I did not get on this, and I highly regret doing that. So definitely get that so that you can cover anything like flyaways and be able to save some money. And last bonus point, make sure to get ND filters. I have a variable ND living on it constantly from K&F Concept on Amazon. Super cheap. And you might be thinking, like, why do I need to get an additional thing? Like, other people don't get ND filters for their drone. Just trust me, you want to be able to have as clean of an image. And if it's really bright outside, the drone is going to be upping the shutter speed really, really high. It can make it look a little more like digital, and that's ultimately not what you want. You want it to look natural, have a little bit of motion blur. So if you're shooting like 24 frames per second, you're going to be shooting in 1/50th shutter speed. And if none of that makes sense, then I can make another video explaining that. But just get an ND filter. It's going to be worth the time and investment. And get a variable one. You can just fix like any of the color casting in post. So all that being said, that's kind of like my use case. I feel like this is probably the best option financially for someone making content. There's like the Hover Air X that follows you behind. It's kind of like an indestructible drone. This is going to look like miles better than that. I've looked at all of those videos. I really wanted to use them because of the ease of not having to carry the remote, but it's just like not even close, the level of quality. To be able to color grade this in 10-bit is just, it's going to be a huge difference in terms of quality. If you don't care about quality, if you don't want to take the time to color grade, you could pick up something like that. It's still going to be like $300 something, maybe even more. But in my opinion, having that 10-bit color and being able to color grade is going to make a huge difference long term. And again, if you want to grab any of those LUTs, check out the description and I'll have a few of them listed in there. All right, as always, equipment is just equipment until the person using them puts them to use. So if you grab this camera, let me know and make some cool stuff.